Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. Hey guys, welcome back to Between the Sheets. I'm excited to have a couple on here tonight. We've only had a couple on here one other time. Otherwise, it's just single guests. So I'm pretty excited about tonight. We have Dr. Heidi Hastings, who has a PhD in human development and family studies, and Dr. Scott Hastings. He is a family practice physician, and they both treat families and partners and marriages and really helping people to strive to be their best in their relationships. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys tonight. Welcome.
Thanks for having us on. We're really excited to be
Thanks a
here.
lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you guys kind of practice together? Do you have separate practices and bounce ideas off each other? How does this work for you?
Well, we have separate practices, but we work together in both realms.
Okay.
He's the scientist physician, and I'm the social scientist. I work more with clients having relationship issues. He works more from a medical perspective, and then we share a lot of decision making and counsel together on how we're doing things. And then he's on the podcast with me.
That's awesome. I love that. It's something that I lack in practice as a urologist is having, here I talk to the guys about their ED or their women about their pelvic pain and things, but I have to refer out for therapy and more of the connection part of it. So I really love the fact that you guys can use each other and have this more holistic approach. It's amazing.
We love it.
We do.
Yeah.
This is like a dream come true.
I bet. And I'm sure your patients love it too, because they can stay in-house and know both of you very well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, marriage we found is a risk factor or a risk protection, just as much as cholesterol medicine. So I let my patients know about our podcast,
Yeah.
and we don't get into their marriages a lot during our visits, but I think that between what she does and what I do, we're able to really provide a lot of help to people outside of just the medical side of things.
Yeah.
And Scott loves to say that having a good marriage is a better indicator or a better protection against.
Well, yeah, good marriage.
Yeah.
That's the caveat.
Than having a lot of these health problems. If we don't have a good
actually,
marriage,
there's a lower risk of death from heart attack, stroke, from just a good marriage that's defined by both people is good than your cholesterol medicine. So
there's quite a bit of research that backs that up.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what do you kind of qualify in this good marriage category? I'm assuming communication, sex, all of these things, but what are your ideas?
Well, based on my research, we've come up with 4 cornerstones that make what we call a scintillating marriage. Not just a good marriage, not just an okay marriage, but one that's shiny, bright, exciting. And that doesn't mean it is 100% of the time, but it means we have enough of these points where things are really scintillating that it makes us keep coming back and wanting to dive deeper into that marriage and have that deep connection. Scott, do you want to tell what they are?
Yeah. So identity, you need to know who we are, right? And I know you have a podcast that's mainly based toward the sexual side of a relationship. And I think that's also really important to know our sexual identity as well. A lot of us don't know.
And I think women especially struggle with that. And I think men sometimes get their identity, sexual identity from sources that may or may not be helpful.
Yeah.
And then we have intentionality. So it requires us to sit with ourselves and with our spouse and discuss what's important. We need to plan on these things. And again, when it comes to sex, we are big proponents of scheduling sex.
And that might not sound all that romantic, but it really does help to prioritize our sexual relationship when We're really, really busy with work, with careers, with kids, with hobbies. And so to prioritize each other is really important. It's not that it always has to be scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
You want to leave room certainly for just going with the moment and having that passion, but to have at least some times when it's scheduled. We kind of like to think of that as, say, for instance, you are a mom who's driving through in and out to get your kids something to eat because you're getting home from work late, you're hitting traffic at rush hour traffic, you're listening to a podcast in your ears, you've got kids screaming in the back, you're trying to do multitask, doing so many things at once. And really, the food is you just gulp it down without even enjoying it as much as you could. And there are times for that, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other times when you want a 5-course meal, you want to just slow things down and be intentional about all of the experience, the sounds, the sights, the smells, the touch. So
It could be McDonald's you're going to, but it's always In and Out. Why do you use that?
I don't know. But
She
No,
uses
I'm a
that one
huge
instead of
fan.
McDonald's.
Right. I'm a huge fan of scheduled sex too. I remind my patients all the time, when you were first dating, you did have scheduled sex because you had a date on a Tuesday and you had a date on a Friday. So it was scheduled. So it's not that it's unsexy. It's just that, yeah, you live together now and life is there, but you still have to schedule that time for each other. So I think it's just kind of like reframing your mind about what scheduling sex means.
right.
It's
And
not that it's
scheduling,
unsexy.
right.
No, it is very sexy,
Scheduling date
actually.
night too.
Yeah,
That's a good time for it.
Our third
absolutely.
cornerstone, insight. So we can know who we are, be intentional, but without insight, we're not going to be able to change when problems arise or when learning can happen, right?
It's
Mhm.
always somebody else's
And
fault. We're the
so
victim.
we're able to become self-aware of our own selves and also aware, external self-awareness, people around us
Mm,
and how we react to them and they to us.
And impact them. How our behaviors, how our thoughts, how our interactions can hurt or help the
mm,
relationship, and
And
yeah,
especially the sexual relationship.
sure.
and then lastly, intimacy, which is not just sex.
Correct.
It's a whole lot of other stuff that
Yes.
includes sex.
Right.
We love to talk about financial intimacy,
Mm,
spiritual intimacy, intellectual intimacy, of course, emotional intimacy, where you're talking about things with your partner that you would never talk about with someone else. Just the very most inner parts of your soul, recreational intimacy. Did I leave some out?
Well, that's most of them. But I think
Physical intimacy that's separate from sexual intimacy.
mhm,
Yeah.
and it takes a lifetime. You're not going to
yeah.
know this after a 6-month course.
Yeah.
It takes a lifetime of refinement.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you have a kind of a course or anything that you take people through to help kind of focus on these pillars or develop them better in their relationships?
Yes, it's called Marriage IQ Podcast.
We don't have a course at this point, but we're working towards that. But we do have a podcast where we come back every week to these 4 pillars, looking at them from multiple viewpoints, multiple perspectives.
Yeah. I liked what you said about intimacy not just being sex because that's something that, I talk about too. I have patients that get to the point where sex is not an option anymore. Maybe they can't get erections anymore post prostatectomy or something along those lines and they're not a candidate for, a prosthesis or something along those lines. And so we have to talk about how to penetrative sex does not have to be the only intimacy in their relationship. And so the pillow talk and the mutual masturbation or the, going out and having a specific time together where you do have that emotional connection and you're talking about things that you don't share with anybody else and finding these ways to have that intimacy. It's so important, especially when you can't have the same type of physical intimacy that you've had previously.
That's true. And we do talk about sexual mindfulness as
Mhm.
one option for that kind of circumstance, but really it's a beautiful idea of just enhancing the sexual relationship for anybody.
Mhm.
But for those who can't have the traditional method of intercourse, sexual mindfulness, just exploring each other's body in very, very mindful ways, very deeply connecting ways, gazing deeply in each other's eyes, has been shown to be just as fulfilling for a lot of people.
In
That's
fact,
great.
we talk about this specifically in an episode called "Real Men Are Sloths."
Ooh.
It's about slowing down, right?
Yeah.
Especially for the man, because some data shows that the average length of time for sexual experience, sexual intercourse, is
Hmm.
6 minutes.
Yeah.
And the
How
average
sad is
length of
it?
time for men to orgasm is 5 minutes.
Hmm.
The average length of women to orgasm is a lot more than
About
5 minutes.
15,
Yeah.
could be
7 to
30 if they're
14
in
minutes.
menopause.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really trying to train men to slow things down because
Mm.
the timing is not matching up here.
Right.
And if men really want to please their woman like they say they do,
Hmm.
then that average length of time is going to be longer than 6 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we teach about sensate touch, which is not our own original idea.
Comes from Masters and Johnson
Hmm.
But yeah,
in
just,
the early days of research on sex, but that's just, well, why don't you explain it?
well, yeah, there's some research showing that when you do slow sensate touch on men and women actually interpret it more sensitively. They've actually been able to identify for both men and women how sensitive it is and how what kind of meaning it creates in their mind. And so women really, really, really tend, again, generally speaking, and I'm not saying all women are like this,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, they like soft touch on all over their body.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's just staying away from the erogenous zones, at least for the first part. Just slow, slow, gentle touch
Hmm.
all over the body. Staying away from those zones helps build that sexual energy, prepares women to have orgasms, helps men slow down a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing that I like to talk to my patients about too is starting earlier in the day, right? Sending
Mhm.
a text message saying, I'm really looking forward to tonight, maybe giving an example of what you're going to do later, something like that, where it really helps you get in the mind frame even earlier in the day as you go so that you're almost primed and ready before you even get to the physical touch part.
Yeah.
Because it is such a gap between the time frame and for men who do have a premature ejaculation or climax faster than they would like to, that becomes another issue. And so, if we can really pull it back, like you're saying, and do more of the touch and the foreplay and the breathing techniques and the eye contact, like you mentioned, it really brings that intimacy to a whole nother level.
There are two things you said there that I want to touch on. First of all, is doing different things throughout the day to build that intimacy that helps lead to that mindset better. And we like to kind of joke around that cleaning the toilets, bathing the children, helping out around the house is
Doing the
one of the
dishes.
biggest turn ons
Oh.
for women.
I think it's just when you see me leaning over and putting them in.
No, no, it might be the other way
Butt looks
around.
good in those jeans today, huh?
Oh, that is a sexy
Ooh la
dish.
la.
Oh,
Oh, but the other thing you brought up is slowing down, learning to slow down. And we find that mindful holding is a really good
Mm,
way to do that as well. And that is just simply holding each other in a hug
mhm,
without letting our bodies respond sexually, trying to just
mhm.
tap that down and just be present. Notice how bodies are responding. But for some men, that takes actual training
Yeah.
to be like, okay, this is not foreplay. This
Mm.
is just we're holding each other for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, however long, noticing our bodies, noticing what they do, and then we break and go our separate ways for a little bit.
Yeah. And to your earlier point, you had said that, being in a good marriage reduces the need for cholesterol medicine and things. Isn't there also research about giving hugs that it reduces our blood pressure and our depression and things like that as well?
And it increases oxytocin,
Yeah.
big
yes.
oxytocin.
Yeah. It's a huge boost for oxytocin. Yes, it does. It helps reduce the epinephrine and cortisol production when we're able to have that skin to skin contact. And sometimes it can be uncomfortable if you hug each other for a long time. But I
Yeah.
think practicing, just
Mhm.
practicing.
Start with a couple minutes.
For men, when it comes to that sensate touch, I mean, we tell them, look, set a timer because you're going to want to go get moving along after 2 or 3 minutes. And the magic really doesn't start happening until you're a good at least 15 to 20 minutes into just this. This is all part of foreplay.
Yeah.
I mean, an hour of foreplay is not is not really out of the realm of possibility if you slow it down enough. That's why if you look at YouTube videos on sloths, they are very, very slow animals.
Yeah.
So hence the analogy.
I love it. I love it. So, when you have patients come in with kind of some specific medical needs that are really affecting their marriage and their relationship, they're not able to keep up with their partner, maybe to go hiking or to even, stamina to do anything throughout the day, how do you kind of start to pull them back? I'm assuming that you do, full workup and stuff and really help them medically. But then there's also that component of the therapy side of things that you guys are able to bring in. Is that correct?
Yeah, we typically have different clients, but we do counsel with each other a lot in the ways that those work. Do you wanna?
Well, I would say I would start out by saying we really want to try to maximize their functionality, regardless of where they're at, right?
Yeah.
We can always work on ourselves
Mhm.
physically, even as we are older, if we've had a heart attack or prostate cancer, whatever it is, because when we start to push ourselves in that realm, things start to improve kind of on their
Mhm.
own, right? Now, there are things that can certainly help. There are hormones and things
Mhm.
that can help that along, medications that can help that along. But I found that if we start with the basics, wherever you're at
Mhm.
in your relationship, however old you are, if we start with the basics of, hey, let's really look at our diet. Let's
Mhm.
really look at our daily activities, and I know that sounds really, really basic and trite, but it is so big
Yeah.
when we can start maximizing on that front.
Mhm.
That's gonna be, I think, one of the best helps, augmenting with medications and hormones if needed
Yeah.
to help that relationship.
I would say from my side of things as well, a lot of times medical problems seem to be tied to trauma, and that's an area that I often explore.
Mhm.
What is perhaps a history with trauma that could be impacting your health? And we look at all kinds of things. Sexual betrayal is a big one that was part of my own research,
Mhm.
how that impacts the relationship, how that impacts sexuality, how that impacts
Mhm.
identity, how that impacts um, help, how
Yeah.
it impacts parenting, especially mothering, if she's been sexually betrayed or sexually abused. And so we do look at some of those things as well and look at ways to address those. And in
Mhm.
doing so, find some ways to help the supporting spouse understand the process that she may have gone through or may be going through, and how empathy and support and trust can make a big difference ultimately in the relationship, but often also in her health.
Yeah. Do you find that patients who come in with certain things, I have found this when I referred patients out, so I'm curious what your experience is on your side, is if I have women with pelvic pain, discomfort, especially during sexual intimacy, and there's nothing physically that I can see that I can do for them, I might send them to pelvic floor physical therapy as well, but I send them to a therapist. And a lot of times I find out, either the patient tells me or, I get the pelvic floor notes, and it's because of a past trauma. Is that something that
Absolutely.
you see?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
It amazes me that the body can hold that trauma and cause pain like that.
Yeah, we love the book Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
Yeah, the body truly does. I had one woman I interviewed that she would come down on they call it D-Day sometimes, the day of
Mhm.
discovery of sexual betrayal of her spouse. On that anniversary date, every year she gets massively sick. But yes, pelvic pain is that's one of the big indicators for it, is
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And a lot of times they've never told anybody about the trauma and would never put two and two together that that's what it
Mhm.
is. They just think they're broken, something's wrong with them.
Yeah. And I've had some that too, they don't even recall off the top of their head the trauma. And
Yeah.
it's through the therapy
Right.
that they're able to remember what happened to them because they've buried it so deep.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me what the body does with trauma.
Yeah, it's kinda hard to unwind it a little bit sometimes, right? And
Mhm.
when you're dealing with, let's say, a trauma as a child and then being re-traumatized as an adult, there's a lot to unpack.
Mhm.
Complex trauma.
So in
Mhm.
order to get that 4th cornerstone, that intimacy, sometimes that again, that might take a lifetime of unpacking and recognizing, pulling that out, and then finding ways to address it in healthy ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it for those who have experienced sexual trauma of any kind, whether it's betrayal or whether it's abuse, that's part of our identity.
Mhm.
But what we really try to do is say, yes, this is part of your identity. It's not the only part of your identity.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to overtake all of the other parts. As we
Yeah.
focus on healing that and make other parts of our identity grow bigger and take more of a magnification of our thoughts and our goals and our uh, intentionality in our relationship, that can become kind of a back seat. It's there and it might be triggered every once in a while,
Mhm.
and we can acknowledge that it happened as part of our identity, but it doesn't have to rule our entire lives.
I think, when you had talked about earlier the emotional intimacy and what you can create in that partnership and using soft language with each other, that when you do have those moments that your trauma is coming up, being able to be respectful towards the other person and things like that. Because I think, I'm sitting here in my head and thinking about past relationships that didn't work out for a variety of reasons, but
Yeah.
the way that people react to you really impacts your ability to either continue to open up to them or totally pull back.
Yeah.
And if when you open up about this trauma, they're, neglectful about it or rude about it, don't talk to me about that, that was your past kind of thing. I can just imagine how much they would just tense up even further and have even more trauma because of that.
That's true. I think it's really important to explain to the partner, this is the process that's going on.
Mhm.
This is what's happening, pain being one, but emotional reactivity being a huge other one, shame being part of it. All of that can impact a sexual relationship of a couple.
Yeah.
So if they understand, if they can see this is what's going on with my spouse, and just knowing that, and maybe having a better understanding of language to use surrounding that, how to be empathetic and supportive, that can really make a big difference. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I think people just don't know this isn't something that we talk about because sexual abuse or sexual trauma is very shameful, generally speaking, for
Mhm.
most people.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me how much shame is still prevalent with sex, whether it's trauma or not. I mean, just talking about sex, talking about your sexuality, your likes and dislikes. I mean, there's still so much taboo surrounding sex and sexuality that I find even when my patients, like, I have pictures of the different ED treatments on my wall so that my guys can point at it and be like, "Can we talk about that?" 'Cause some of them don't even wanna say, "Hey, my dick doesn't work right anymore," and they're so embarrassed, and I'm like, "Let's pull the shame away, please."
Right. And so many will not get the help they need. So if you've got
Mhm.
them in your office, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Well, I think I mean, you're totally right. We gotta pull away the curtain here on shame and sex, and that's kind of part of our mission, right? This is a
Mhm.
passion project for us. And I think part of that is maybe looking at some of the ambivalence that we have around sex because, usually parents don't talk about it. We may learn about it from friends or, on our wedding night or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or in porn for a lot of guys
if yeah,
or for a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
and so it is interesting too because there does seem to be a lot of mixed messages. I think speaking as a guy, I think for women there might be a lot of mixed messages
Yeah.
about, hey, wait a minute, I might I'm turned on, but I'm not really turned on, right?
Mm.
And they don't know how to interpret that. For
Right.
guys, I think it is a little bit more linear, and you can disagree with me here. But I really think it's more linear. Speaking as a guy, we are just spontaneously driven. There's a
Mm.
drive. I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying the vast majority of men. And for women, it's this complex picture.
Yeah.
And again, not trying to stereotype, but
Yeah.
it can be really confusing. And so I think, like you said, taking away the shame out of
Mhm.
this, it really requires all of us to sit down with ourselves and to be intentional and say,
Yeah.
okay, what is happening in my body?
Well, I don't think women really have the language for that typically often. Maybe the
Mhm.
young generations do a little bit more, but I think that's hard to even identify for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so you're right. I love your point that we need to take the shame out of it. Need to talk about it using correct terms, talking about what is kind of debunking those myths. There are a lot of
Yeah.
myths that the man is the sexual one and the woman doesn't have the same capacity when actually research shows the opposite is true. The research shows that she has a much greater capacity
Mhm.
for sexual enjoyment than and sexual pleasure than the man does.
That's really mind blowing,
The
but
clitoris
it's
has
true.
It
double
is.
the nerve endings in it than the penis does, and
Yeah.
it grows to about the same size, but it's internally. All of her sexual
Yeah.
organs are inside, and
Mhm.
so she may not be familiar with them, she may not know what they look like, what they do, and
Yeah.
unless she's learned or heard about it in a way that is comfortable for her,
Mhm.
then she's kind of at a loss for knowing what she's actually capable of.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, in a lot of the culture in the United States, there's a very Christian culture that we have where it's don't have sex till you're married. And
Mhm.
then bam, that wedding night, you better be a sex goddess and know what you're doing and be ready to please your man.
And it's supposed to
And
be all great, and it's not.
and it's not, and it's painful, and you don't know
Yeah,
you're not turned on enough, and then it hurts,
yeah,
and all these things, and it's just we're doing such a disservice to our younger generations by not talking to them more and teaching them more. I know when my kids are young adults, and my son is a senior in high school, his buddies will come over, and they always ask me questions because they know what I do for a living.
that's good.
It is. It's great because their only other source is porn, and it's
Right,
on their phones now. It's
Yeah.
everywhere now.
and that's
It's
not
not like
healthy
back in the
sexuality.
No, and in fact, I see more young men in their 20s and early 30s with new onset of erectile dysfunction
Yep,
because of their porn and masturbation use than I see guys later in life because of their medicines and their, decreased blood flow and all of those things. It's
yeah,
a phenomenon right
yeah,
now.
it is. Mhm.
Well, we're trying to help with that,
Yeah,
communicating with there shouldn't be any shame with this,
Yeah.
and I think it's okay to be vulnerable when we talk about that,
Mhm.
which we do in our podcast, but yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know what to do or how to say it, and they
Yeah.
don't even know what to say, right? It's
Right.
an unknown unknown, and so by pulling out some of this, at least now we can get it to a known
Mhm.
unknown,
Right.
and then we can get it to a known.
I
yeah,
mean, it starts Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in my research, the women who'd been betrayed, often pornography was part of the experience, and because they didn't have sexual language and they didn't know very much about it, it really put them at risk
Mm.
and just made everything more complex and more complicated and more destructive for them. But they did later say, "No, I really want to learn about healthy sexuality now. I want to
Mhm.
learn about it, not from being groomed, not from it being male centric, but from a position where I can use my sexual agency, where I
Mhm.
can have it be an intimate experience, not just a physical sexual experience." And I think they found themselves to be very interested to know the truth about it. But,
Mhm.
many years had gone by for a lot of them. How awesome would it be if we can talk about it in a healthy way, in a way that is comfortable for those who are religious or for
Mhm.
anybody really,
Yeah.
where they can ask questions and where they can understand about the capacity that their body has and be able to set boundaries and understand the value of consent.
Mhm.
Consent is
Yeah.
cool.
It is cool, it's good, and I think it goes back to all the way to infancy when we are teaching kids the terms. We don't need to
Yes.
call it the wee-wee, we don't need to call
Yes.
it your girl parts, we can call it a vagina, we can call it a vulva, we can call it a penis, because there should not be shame with those words, and, to back to the trauma point, these young kids don't know how to describe where someone touched them or what happened to them because they don't have the right terms. And what means something to one family doesn't necessarily mean it to the next. So I think
Yeah.
we have to start from early on and then continue that education age appropriately. But we need to do a better job of this because it's starting the shame from very early on.
Yeah, even little things like associating terrible smells with,
Mhm.
you know,
I think that
the
part
body
of
parts that later they're going to want to use for pleasure, but
Mhm.
they see them as stinky and bad and
Yeah.
horrible. That's an area where we can change a lot of our language to be
Yeah.
like, this is a normal part of life.
yeah, I think there's layers because every parent's going to have their own story, right? And
Mhm.
why they're not teaching their children. And it really starts with just unpeeling some of these layers from the parent's side and learning that, hey, look, vulnerability is really cool.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
authenticity, genuineness, honesty, like these are really, really cool traits. And if
Mhm.
we're going to start openly talking about sex with our children and with each other, let's focus on being okay with being vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
Which you can go down a whole rabbit hole with that one, with men especially. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, let's get that conversation started.
Yeah. Do you see men too, talking about how women are just supposed to be ready to be that sex goddess on their wedding night? Do you find that there are men who do not fit the societal norm of I want sex all the time, I'm just horny, 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 and they're not, and then they feel shame and have issues with that because the society has said this is how you should be?
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know the exact percentages. It's going to
I
be,
think at least 30% of women are the higher desire partner.
Mhm.
And to what extent that is, if it's problematic in the relationship or if it's closely aligned and they don't
Mhm.
care. I don't know. There's probably a spectrum there, but
for men. Yeah, it's probably, I think it is less than that. It's the good majority. I'm probably 85 to 90%. But don't quote me on that. I'm going to have to look that up. But I mean, yes, you're right. There are definitely those men who do not, they lack that drive, and it does become very problematic to them.
Yeah.
And you know,
and sometimes to their wife too, who is expecting them to be like
Right.
what they hear it's supposed to be.
yeah. So, and that's the other thing too, is because it is such a pretty relatively small group, they kind of feel alone, right?
Mhm.
They feel like nobody understands them, or they're- why am I so different?
Have you
Right.
heard statistics on that? The number of
No,
men?
not for a specific number, but I just know
Okay.
I have guys who will come in,
Yeah.
thinking they have low testosterone, and we check them, and they're total T, they're free T, everything is fine, they're good, and they just don't have the desire, and it's so then I'm sending them to a sex therapist, I'm sending them somewhere else because they just feel so ashamed. They want a reason for why they have low libido, and when I can't give them that medically, they're really stuck, they feel bad.
Well, if they're not bothered by it, then I say no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah.
But I'm understanding that they come to you that they are bothered by their
Yes.
low libido.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same for men, but for women, like who's the low desire partner and who's the high desire partner changes
Sure.
over the lifespan. And so
Mhm.
that may change.
Yeah.
For women, there are so many things that we kind of like to use the term dual control that some researchers use. There are some brakes and some accelerators. And when you've got little kids or when you've had trauma, those are really brakes that can impact desire. The same may
Mhm.
be exactly same thing for men. I don't know
Yeah.
what their brakes. I study women more, but
Mhm.
that may change as healing happens, as they get help, and
Yeah.
it may just flip flop.
I would say with those men with low desire too, the sensate touch really helping them just pull into their
Mhm.
body,
Mm.
and maybe having their wife do the sensate touch
Yeah.
on them. It again, it slows things down. It allows things to naturally happen slowly. And I mean, you can have an hour's worth of sensate touch and it can go just like that.
Yeah.
And so that's probably one where, so you're taking that pressure off the table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no
of sex, of penetration, of orgasm.
no expectation of
It's
orgasm.
it's now being moved off the table, and for those guys, I would definitely teach them about the, sexual mindfulness, which I think everyone should know about this. This is
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
deeper
it's really
connection
eye-opening.
sexually is incredible.
Yeah. How do you help your couples that have mismatched libidos? One is higher, one is lower. They're struggling to find that time. We talked about scheduled sex earlier in the episode. That's one of my favorite tips. What are some things that you guys talk to them about?
Can I just take
Mhm,
this for a minute? And then
mhm.
I am really opinionated on this. So that's why I want to take it. I'll let you, but I wonder, we've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of research on this. And I'm curious. I think the whole idea about the traditional way of the man's always the higher desire, the woman's always lower desire. I think that's coming from studies that are done by men, mainly by men. I think that
It's
the
true.
scientific literature is written in a man's language.
Up until
Mhm.
about 10 years ago or so.
Yep.
And so because of that, what if, as you were saying earlier, what if the women's libido was actually just as high, if not higher, but it's defined differently? So when we think of libido, right? It's like what? Sex drive,
Yeah.
initiation, the spontaneity, right?
Mhm.
Thinking
That's all
about
from the men.
sex.
Yeah,
Yeah. The men get to define what libido means.
they're spontaneous.
Now we know that women are, well, you said 70-30. So 30% they are more spontaneous, but that leaves 70% who are more responsive or
Mhm.
contextual,
Yeah.
right? And what if that sex drive now, when the situation's right and ripe, timing, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
you start early in the day, doing the dishes, things like that, kind of setting the mood, setting the mode. And then the moment when that penetration happens, there's this like supercharge from not, I'm not a woman, so I don't know this, but you go from 0 to 100 pretty quickly. And it just that arrives, that sex drive arrives, and now it's like, "Oh, I want it now."
Yeah, she often doesn't know that she wants it
She doesn't know she wants it.
until she's made the decision. The
Mhm.
biggest sex organ for both men and women is their brain. And making decisions for women, thinking, I want this, I'm going to do it. And then her body often will follow after.
Mhm.
So we do recommend that. We try to take the shame out of sex aids that maybe for some they think are associated with really bad people or just try to say, look, these are things to help. Things like vibrators and things,
Mhm.
those are to help. Those aren't just for
Mhm.
kinky sex. That is to help women have pleasure and
Mhm.
kind of trying to reframe some of uh, the culture maybe that they grew up with. That's a big one.
Mhm.
Slowing things down, talking more about sexual communication, having a time, especially during the afterglow, where you
Mhm.
just seem to be a little bit more free with, "This is what I really liked. This is
Yeah.
what I didn't."
Yeah, I do love a good aftercare session and a discussion outside of the bedroom. What went well, what didn't go well. And I don't remember who did the research study, but I recall reading a research study that said in a long-term relationship, there's going to be about 8 times in that entire relationship where you're both in the mood at the exact same time, ready to go.
Right,
8 times. Otherwise, he's in the mood, she's in the mood. It's he likes morning sex, she likes night sex, like all these different changes in how you like it and when you like it. And it's really like you said, like pulling back those layers, talking about it, scheduling it, finding the time that works for you guys. Because I don't know, I don't think any of my friends all have like, this is when we both like to have sex and this is how we both like to have sex every single time.
right, and
Yeah, it's a combo, right? It's the
Mhm.
combo package. Sometimes it's in and out, and sometimes it is the 8-course French
Yeah.
dinner,
yep,
you know?
Yep. Sometimes it's hurry up, my kid's going to be home from practice in 15 minutes. And sometimes we have the house to ourselves.
yep. But that's really the beauty of it, is coming back over and over and over again and tweaking things, trying things that didn't work so well.
Mhm.
We can maybe try it again that way, but if we're getting too many times that this isn't working well, then maybe this is off the table. We're going to try this. This
Yeah.
is like the biggest experiment.
Yeah.
And you find things that work, but if you totally slow things down at least once in a while, it doesn't have to be every time, like Scott said, um, you are exploring new possibilities that you would have never thought about
Mhm.
many decades into your marriage
Yeah.
and reaching deeper and deeper levels.
Of course, as a prerequisite, you really need to feel safe, right?
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
we really talk about integrity as being the bedrock to our four
Mhm.
cornerstones. If there's not integrity, if there's not honesty, if there's
You
not
can't feel
trust,
safe.
if you don't feel safe physically or emotionally, it's going to compromise the whole sexual experience.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. This has been such an amazing conversation. I've loved it. I want you to plug your podcast and how people can get in touch with you. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. Thank you so much for being on here. Go ahead
Good
and share
luck.
how people can be in touch with you.
Yeah, so we have our Marriage IQ podcast. You can find that on Spotify, on Apple. We're also on YouTube now, Marriage IQ, and twice a week. We put out episodes that range anywhere from sex to communication, trust, honesty, all using our four cornerstones.
And if people want to get in touch with us, we have a couple of different websites, marriageiq.com and drheidihastings.com, where I have more of my research published. We have links there to Marriage IQ, but we also have Betrayal IQ. We're soon going to be doing Newlywed IQ, and we've got a couple of other ones in mind as well. But they can access resources there, they can access research, and you can always reach out to us at hello@marriageiq.com if you want to send an email with questions or comments.
Aw-
I guess
Awesome.
we're also on Instagram too.
Okay, perfect. And we'll include that in the show notes too, so people can find you if they're driving right now or whatever they're doing while they're
Perfect.
listening. Thank you so much for being on here. It's such a pleasure.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for the good work that you're doing. We really need that. So this has
I
been a
appreciate
pleasure.
that. I appreciate that. Thanks. All right, everybody, have a great week and go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.